Hello everyone. Hello Jonathan. Hello Jodeen. I think we are live. I see the little YouTube sign on top now.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
Oh, that's where that is. Oh, okay.
It's learning every day, honestly. I only
Every
figured
day.
that out last week, so
Okay, I'm just a week behind then. Okay, no big deal.
how was everybody's day?
It was good. Yeah, it was busy. How about you guys?
Yeah, it was good for me too. I I mean, say the same thing. I'll just echo you like a parrot. It was good. It was busy. It's a typical Tuesday.
Yeah.
It is Tuesday, right? Yeah, yeah.
And Tuesdays we have a lot of meetings, Jonathan. So me and Jodeen were stuck in meetings all afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Meetings.
That's not great. I don't love meetings,
Don't
especially
recommend.
staff meetings. Yeah. It's one
Yeah.
thing when you're self-employed, your staff meetings are much more interesting. You're just talking to yourself in the mirror.
Talk to yourself. That's good.
And I've noticed like
Shanza,
sometimes these Zoom meetings will give us like Zoom fatigue. Like
That's
yes.
so
your face.
true.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
real thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when Russ and I and Carrie and Brian teach the collaborative course, we're online, for 5 or 6 hours a day, and it is exhausting. I find like I need an
Mhm.
hour just to recover and
Hmm.
get back my energy after that for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Was the same when I was in my first year of law school. It was all online because it was COVID. My
Yeah,
goodness, it was like you're sitting in one place, but all that Zoom time is exhausting.
yeah.
Uh, I took so many naps that year. Mm.
Jadine, are you guilty of taking your classes from bed?
What? Me? No,
Not that she'll admit
no,
to.
no, 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 no. And that's all I'll say.
Well,
Shanza, I see that you've from your bio that you've traveled quite a lot. Um, Did you grow up traveling, or is that all stuff you've done as an adult?
I grew up traveling. My family, they travel every year. So most of
Okay.
those places I've traveled with family. And I'm
Oh, that's
not gonna
awesome.
lie, since I got called last year, I have not traveled and I'm at a point where I need it.
Yeah. And what
You
was your
must.
favorite place to visit?
My favorite place was South Korea. It was
Ooh,
Oh, nice.
it's so different, like the culture there. It was like compared to like other countries, it was honestly, and I have some family who lives there, so I've been there about like four times.
that's lovely.
So I like to
Oh, okay. So
believe
you
I'm a
actually get to know the
community.
country a bit.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Not just the touristy bits, but like just see life, culture
Yeah.
thriving. That's lovely.
That is a country I've definitely wanted to go to, but have never been to. Never been to South Korea.
Maybe you should this year. This is your calling.
There
Well,
you
this
go.
year I've got a trip scheduled for Italy, so I'm excited about
Oh,
that.
Oh, oh, Italy in the summer? That would be
Yep,
nice. Ooh,
I love
that's a
it.
it's gonna be
dream of
great.
mine. I haven't been yet, but it's on the list.
Well, it is 5 o'clock. As much as I would love to keep talking about travel, I will
Easily.
let it. Um, I would welcome everyone to our Family Law Now After Hours series. Today we have a special guest, Jonathan Paynter. He is back with us for another week. Um, Today we are talking about how to tell your children you're getting divorced. And this topic is important because how you communicate with your children about the divorce can significantly impact their emotional well-being and their ability to adjust to the changes that are upcoming. Before we begin, just a couple housekeeping. The purpose of this series is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and family law matters. Any information provided today should not be considered as legal advice. If you do have any questions regarding your specific matter, please call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation to receive tailored advice. And do stay tuned until the end. We will be sharing how you can schedule a free consultation with one of our lawyers of up to 20 minutes. Now, I will go on to the bios for our speakers today. We have Jonathan Paynter joining us. He is a registered social worker and psychotherapist who works in the family law system, completing parenting plan assessments, voice of the child reports, family mediation, and collaborative family law in private practice. He also provides psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, family therapy, and couples counseling for children and adults. Jonathan is on the board of directors of the Ontario Association for Family Mediation, holding the executive position as treasurer of the board, and is on the board of the Collaborative Practice Durham region. We have Jodeen. Jodeen is an articling student at RIA. She has gained valuable experience across both collaborative and litigation files. Her legal journey began at Queen's University, where she honed her advocacy skills through roles at the Neighborhood Legal Services Legal Clinic and the Family and Children's Services of Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington. These experiences helped her develop a keen ability to navigate complex legal issues with empathy and insight. Lastly, there is me. I'm a family lawyer with a strong focus on compassionate and effective legal representation. My background is in business management, which enhances my strategic approach to legal matters. I excel in negotiation, achieving favorable settlements through strategic dialogue and strong advocacy for my clients. I prioritize clear communication, ensuring that clients are informed and empowered throughout the legal process. Now we will move on to our topic for today, and I will jump right into it. And I'm gonna give a bit of an introduction. I'm going to talk about the first step about having to communicate to your children about an upcoming divorce. So the first step in having this difficult conversation with your children is to plan it. And you want to plan how you're going to have this conversation. It's crucial to coordinate with your spouse on the timing, on the tone, on the setting of the conversation. This will help ensure that both of you are on the same page, and it will provide consistency and support to your children. Before you speak to them, take the time to decide together when and where the conversation will take place. You want to choose a quiet, comfortable setting where you won't be interrupted. Make sure to arrange it at a time when your children aren't feeling stressed or aren't distracted. Ideally, this should be when you both have plenty of time to, talk to them and answer any questions that they may have. And both parents should be involved in this conversation. This gives your children reassurance that they're not being abandoned by other parent and that both of you are still a team, even though the relationship between you and your spouse is changing, you're still co-parent, you're still parents to your children. It's also important that you agree on the main points that you will cover. You don't want to overwhelm them with too many details, but you do want to be honest about the changes that will be coming and the changes that they can expect. And even from a legal standpoint, remember that this conversation should be about communicating, about reassurance, about giving them comfort. It should not be about legal matters. Legal matters should never, and I cannot stress this enough, should never be discussed with the children. This conversation is not about bad-mouthing the other parent, or it's not about what the parenting arrangement will look like or legal decisions. Those should not be discussed. If your children have any questions about the living arrangements or who will take care of them, it's fine to provide simple, age-appropriate answers, but you should not be going into the details about the legal matters that are an issue. Jonathan, I will come to you, and I would like you to maybe expand a bit more on this introduction, and perhaps if how I mentioned earlier that the parents should choose a safe space. What are your thoughts on that? I apologize, Jodeen, if you can maybe speak on that, and then Jonathan will come back to you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jodeen.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Shanza. Yeah, so most definitely it's important for the parents communicating this news to their children that they do this in a safe space. Um, it's crucial to have this um, conversation in a familiar space because children need an environment where they will feel comfortable and they can ask questions if freely to the parents, right? Want to avoid you want to avoid like just springing these conversations on them out of nowhere because I mean, if you got bad news, you would want to be in a safe space. And so the same applies for children. So the safe space also, the familiar space also provides a sense of stability because if emotions run high, they're already familiar with where they could go to feel comfort. And I think that's very important in making the event less stressful for the child. Because it can be stressful. Some kids might take it and not feel too much stress about it. But you have to be prepared that there might be a reaction of high emotions and stress because it's a huge change in the status quo, the things that they normally do, and they're gonna be thinking about things like where will I go to school? Where will I live? And they'll have those tough questions for you. So being in a space where they already feel comfortable will allow them maybe to just be able to relax a little bit easier, come down from that emotional high a little bit easier. Um, yeah, it will help them to um, relax and know that nothing in this very immediate moment has changed. They're still in their safe space. But it's important to prepare kids for the upcoming challenges. But right now, I think in that same space, in that moment, in that safe space, it's helpful to be in that space to reassure kids that this is not gonna necessarily affect how the parents feel about the child. Nothing has changed about that. You're safe here. Um, I don't know if you want to expand on that, Jonathan, uh, if you have anything
Yeah,
else.
I do. Yeah, you made some really great points there, Jodeen, but I just want to take a step back for a minute and do kind of a satellite eye view of telling your kids about a separation and divorce. First
Thanks.
of all, a lot of parents have a lot of fears about it, and they're really worried they're going to permanently ruin their children's lives by, going through the separation. And telling them about the separation can be one of the most difficult tasks a parent ever has. But
Mhm.
be rest assured, parents, that children recover very quickly from the shock of learning that their parents are separating. They're very adaptable. They can fit into new schedules, new houses, new family members pretty quickly. So separation on its own is not going to cause harm to children, but things like being exposed to fights or nasty comments between their parents, or losing a parent, or being exposed to lots of conflict will cause a lot of harm to them. And so you want to, in keeping with what you and Shanza said, you want to keep all that stuff away from the kids as much as possible. So as a general rule, you want to shield the kids from any kind of conflict. And um, you know as your child's parent, you're going to be the one who best knows what their safe space is. And it wouldn't be a great idea to sort of take them out for dinner
Mm.
and drop this information on them in a public space where they might feel like crying or getting upset or asking questions or even yelling. and you wouldn't want to do that in a restaurant or a mall or at their school or at their hockey game. So yeah, do it like you said, somewhere quiet and where they feel comfortable, and where if they want to run off and have a cry, or if they want to yell and shout and get upset, that it's a good place for them to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great point, Jonathan. And kind of building on to, how you said like these conversations should go. I think an important aspect of this is using age-appropriate language and age-appropriate explanations. Can you expand more on that as well?
Yeah, so we think of kids often as little adults, and if we just kind of dumb it down a bit, then we're good. But that's
Mhm.
not the way kids are. Their brains work very, very differently from adults, and each stage of their development is going to be it's going to look quite different. So, for example, when kids are little, before the ages of 6 or 7, they engage in things like magical thinking. They don't really understand cause and effect very well. Their brains don't work on a linear time scale, so they don't understand very clearly what happens before, in the middle, and after. And so they might think something happened yesterday, but it happened 3 months ago, so they don't have a good sense of time. But then when kids get older, when they're 9 and 10, they're starting to look a little bit more like adults, but they're not adults. They don't have a complex understanding of adult relationships. They they're much more vulnerable at that age to things like parental alienation. And then as you get into the teenage years, teenagers again have a very different brain, and they have what's called a polarized brain. So they think things are either good or evil. There's no in between. I'm either on your side or I'm against you. There's no middle ground. And so you want to plan what you say to the kids based on their age and stage of development. So, for example, young kids are not going to understand anything of what's going on. So you want to provide them with simple information, and then do a lot of reassuring, because young kids engage in magical thinking. They might think, well, this is my fault. I did all this, because they don't really understand cause and effect. They don't understand adult relationships. So you want to make sure that reassure young kids, it's not your fault. It's nothing to do with you. It's an adult issue. You're not going to understand it, but just know that we both love you. We both care about you. We're going to be living in separate homes if that's the case. And this is as much as we can tell you now. And then with an older kid, you want to give them more details. Say, we are going to be living separately. When we live separately, we're going to make our best efforts to keep you in the same school, to give you your own bedroom, whatever information you can provide for them. Try to reassure them, but be cautious, because teenagers and older school age kids, like the 9, 10, 12 kind of range, they have what psychologists call pseudo maturity. So they kind of seem like they're adults, but they're really not adults. So don't overload them with you know, details about what's going on between you and your ex. They don't need to know that. Teenagers often will want to know, but they don't need to know that it's, you feel it's the other parent's fault, or the other parent feels it's your fault, or whatever. Bringing them into the adult conversations, bringing them into that adult conflict is never a good idea. So, and remember, everything's subjective. So you may have a very different opinion of why the marriage is ending compared to your ex. And so you may feel like they're to blame, they may feel you're to blame, and ascribing blame to an adult during a conversation with a child about separation is going to really mess them up and really confuse them, and they're not going to understand things, and they might be tempted to take sides, and for whatever reason, they might think that mom is more of the victim or dad is more of the victim. And you don't want them to do that, because remember, one of the risk factors for kids not dealing well with separation divorce is losing a parent. And it doesn't really matter how they lose a parent. Even if they choose, I'm not going to see that parent anymore because that parent had an affair on my mom or my dad, that's going to negatively affect them in the long run. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So going back to what Shanza said earlier, we don't want to talk to them about the legal issues. If you're going to court, the kids don't, they can know that you're going to court, but they don't need to know anything else. And if you can avoid telling them that you're in court as well, that would be great. It's usually impossible for that to be kept a secret, but remember, anytime you're discussing court stuff with them, you're potentially drawing them into the adult conflict, and we want to avoid that. Just going back to that satellite or bird's eye view again, one of the principles is you want to reduce the amount of stress that children experience through this process as much as possible. And so using age appropriate language is a really important part of keeping their stress levels manageable and not, overloading them with information that they won't understand and they won't be able to process and is just going to cause them a lot more stress. So even if you're really, really angry and upset with your ex, make sure that you avoid telling your kids why you're going through the separation. All the kids need to know is, mom and dad have adult issues that we can't resolve, and we're going to have to live separately, and it's not your fault. And leave it at that.
100%, Jonathan. And I like how you also like divided how the conversation would probably differ depending on the age of the children. So depending on how older they are, they might try to involve themselves more in these conversations. But as parents, you should always know where to draw that line and how much it is that they should really know versus not getting into the nitty-gritty of the legal matters. Because again, you want to shield them from the conflict and you don't want them having to take sides. And this kind of goes into our next topic, which, is about having to present a unified front to the children. There's always concerns with clients that one or the other parent is feeding information to the children, negative information to the children about the other parent. And again, like if you are planning on having this conversation with the children, it's really important that the two of you agree on presenting a unified front there, and reassure your children together about your love for them and how the separation is not going to change, their relationship or your relationship with the children. And so regardless of the challenges in your relationship, regardless of how messy the separation or the divorce might be getting, it's still important to come together as parents for the sake of your children's emotional well-being. So you want to put your conflict aside when you are talking to your children, because again, your focus should be their best interest and their well-being. And as parents, and when I say, unified front, you want to show them that even though the family structure might be changing, you both are still there for them. Make sure they understand that they are not the cause of the divorce, just as Jonathan mentioned before. Children often feel, they can feel a sense of guilt or responsibility. And so you want to make sure that you are actively showing your support to them, your love to them, and letting them know that they are not to blame. And when you speak to them, both of you should express your shared commitment to their stability. A unified message coming from both parents will reassure the children a lot more than, privately you're speaking to them when, there are instances where they're still being exposed to fights, to conflict, versus the two of you coming together and speaking to them as a team and letting them know that, both parents continue to care for them and regardless of any changes, they're still there for them. And again, show respect for your spouse in front of the children. That's part of showing a unified front. This will help minimize confusion. It will help minimize emotional strain. If you need to discuss difficult matters regarding the divorce, again, make sure that the children, are not witnessing any of that. Even from a legal perspective, presenting a unified front can also help you move forward with co-parenting arrangements. If you are separating, you are still going to have years of co-parenting relationship with your ex-partner, regardless of the fact that your marriage no longer exists. So you do want a working relationship with them. Courts will also look for evidence of cooperation between parents. and a consistent, respectful approach can go a very long way in making decisions that are in the best interest of the children. And again, by presenting a unified front, you can show your children that they're loved, they're secure, and they're supported during this challenging time. Speaking more on this topic, Jonathan, I'll come back to you. And if you can expand some more um, on having these conversations with children, specifically how to explain the situation to children. I'm sure you must deal with this a lot in your practice. So, um, what do you say is something that the parents should like an approach they should follow in having to explain the situation honestly to their children about what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm gonna backpedal a bit and go back to something you said before about presenting a united front, which I think is very, very important. And if you're in a situation where you're not allowed to be around your spouse, say there's a criminal restriction, maybe you had a big fight and police were called and you're not allowed to see your spouse or speak with them, or maybe the conflict is so bad you can't even be in the same room together and have a joint conversation, you can still present a united front. All you have to do is work out the details of what you're going to say to the child ahead of time and then present that information to the child yourself. And then your ex can do it on their own time with the kids as well. So going back to that satellite eye view, the number one priority should be reducing the children's exposure to conflict, and that should be a priority over presenting or telling the kids together as a team, right? So if doing that is going to cause the kids a lot of stress, don't do that. Tell them separately, but agree firsthand what to say to them. And if you're having difficulty coming up with a joint statement, then get a therapist involved, get a family mediator involved, get someone like a parenting coach who can help create that message for you. And so that should be another of the satellite eye view is get help. Talk to a therapist, talk to a mediator, talk to a parenting coach. They're the ones who can really help guide you through this process. In terms of explaining the situation to the children, it's really important to be honest with them. A lot of parents will lie to children to protect them and say things that aren't true. So, just to give you an example, I was dealing with a situation earlier today where there was some conflict between two separating parents about the father's new spouse and when to tell the children about that. So what I've seen a lot of is parents saying, well, this is my friend, and not really being honest that, no, it's my intimate partner. And, the next week, this weekend, that's their dad's friend or their mom's friend. And the following weekend, they're moving in with this person. And all of a sudden, that person is their parent's spouse. So that's a real shock to kids, and they need time to mentally prepare for big changes in their life. And the more time you can give them, the better. So when you're explaining the situation to the kids, be honest. Don't lie. Don't say things that aren't true. To try to tell them as early as possible in the process. A lot of parents wait. They're like, well, I want to protect the kids, and I'll just tell them before the day we're moving out. But that doesn't give children time to adjust to the major changes in their life. And the more time they have, the easier that change is going to make. So tell them sooner rather than later. Don't delay, don't procrastinate, don't avoid this very difficult conversation. When I say being honest, I mean it. Don't say anything that's untrue or make up lies, but also remember our earlier conversation about being age appropriate. And if your kids are 30 and you want to tell them that your ex had an affair, or talk to them about the reasons, that's your choice. But if your children are still school aged, then don't do that. It's going to negatively affect their relationship with the other parent, and that's going to negatively affect the child. So do be honest, but don't give them more information than they need. They don't need to know about the adult conflict. They don't need to know the reasons for the separation. They don't need to know the complex relationship problems that you and your ex have had for years. They just need to know, what you and what Shanza and Jodeen already said earlier today was, we both love you. It's not your fault. You're going to keep seeing us, and we're going to work all this out and let you know when we do. So if you, for example, are going through a separation and you've gone to mediation or you've gone to collaborative family law and you've worked out a parenting plan, as soon as you got that parenting plan sorted out, tell the kids, be honest with them. This is what the schedule is going to look like when we're living apart. If you've decided that you're going to put the house up for sale, tell them really soon after you've made that decision, because it's horrible for a child to go to school, have a fun day, come home and see a for sale sign on their home with no notice. It's going to be a real shock to them. And if you know a move out date, for example, tell the kids as soon as possible, and avoid delaying that information. Avoiding if you can. And I know personally, I had to have this conversation with my children when I separated. It was really tough on me. I think it was probably tougher on me than my kids, and part of the reason was because I built this up into my mind to be this, like, life-changing event. And, in some ways it did change their life, but, at the same time, my kids haven't been exposed to conflict. They're both doing well. They both have strong relationships with their parents. So you just want to make sure that, you're thinking about their needs and not your own needs. And if you're having difficulty dealing with this, go get help. It's really important to support yourself through this. So, and a therapist or a mediator or a family law professional can help guide you with what the conversation should look like, what you should be honest about and open up about, and what things the kids don't need to know about, and follow their advice to the letter. That's my my 2 cents on that topic.
Yeah. So yeah, Jonathan, I thought that I read something somewhere once where it said convenience is like the most detrimental thing to the best interests of a child. So the convenience for the parents. So if it's not convenient for you or it doesn't feel good for you, then it's like you're not actually considering the child in that moment. So I thought that your breakdown was really interesting. And then also the I just from what I'm understanding is that if it affects the child, because kids can be selfish. So I feel like you need to consider it like kids are being selfish. They're thinking about what will immediately impact them. You need to think about that as well. And those are the things that you need to communicate to them. Is that fair to say?
That's a great tip. Yeah. Put yourself in your child's shoes and think, what information are they going to want to know? What's important to them? What's relevant to them?
Yeah.
And leave all the other stuff out. They don't need to know about the conflict. They don't need to know about, alcohol issues or drug issues or, infidelity, or all these things are just distractions from being a kid. And if it's a distraction, they don't need to know about it.
No. They want to know who their
And
friends are,
if you're
where their
not
friends
able
are
to
going to be.
manage those issues yourself, then get help. That whole thing that we say in counseling all the time is, when you're on a plane, and if the cabin pressure drops and those masks fall down, you want to put your own mask on before you do your kids, because if you're passed out, you're going to be useless to your children. And so if you're having a hard time with the separation, and it's one of the most difficult things people can go through, so you probably are having a difficult time, go get help, get support. No human is an island. We're social animals. We rely on each other for all kinds of things, food, shelter. I don't know how to put a new roof on my house. I pay someone to do that for me. And so in this case, you may not know how to manage going through a separation, so pay someone to help you get through it, and or use your benefits, or go to some of the free counseling that's available. But yeah, I think as a general rule, it's really important. If you're struggling, then you need to get help, and don't put your struggles on your kids.
Mhm.
100%. And I think like Jonathan and Jodeen, like you said, like there are like these resources, but I think the mismatch here is a lot of time like parents, they're so focused on their own conflict and on the matters that they don't pre-plan these conversations. And I think that's where things kind of go south for a lot of people because children are already exposed to conflict. The parents didn't think things through, and now they're trying to, fix some of the damage that has happened. But it's never too late. It's never too late to get help from professionals or even involving lawyers. Because at the end of the day, it should always be about what's best for the children. And going further into what you said, Jonathan, earlier, and some of the examples that you gave us, I know like these decisions can be very emotional for the children. It's an emotional time altogether for everyone. I know we've provided some, high-level advice on how to approach these conversations, but what would you say on how to acknowledge and validate the children's emotions as you explain them these changes?
Yeah, that's a tough one because when you're having such a difficult conversation with your kids and you see your kids getting upset, you want to fix the problem right away and make it okay and solve all the problems. But really, like separation and divorce is a sad thing to go through for everybody, including the kids. So if they need to get upset, let them get upset. If they need to get angry, let them get angry. Let them express themselves. And what that's going to do is a couple things. One, it's going to help them get all that garbage out of their brains, right? They're going to be able to it's often a good way to deal with emotions is to kind of let them out. That's why people watch sad movies that make them cry because it helps them deal with their own sadness as well. So you're going to help them, be able to get all that frustration and upset feelings out. Two, it's also going to establish a nice pattern where the kids feel comfortable expressing themselves around you. And when they're going through a really difficult time, you want them to be able to come to you and say, I don't like this. I'm unhappy with this. This is making me sad. This is making me angry. This is making me upset. That's going to set them up for success later on because they're going to be able to process all these difficult emotions with you. And again, if you're having difficulty dealing with them, then get help. Get a parenting expert to give you some help on how to tell the kids, how to talk to them about this, how to deal with their upset feelings, all that kind of thing. But kids will have a need to feel um, uh, they'll need a venue to be able to express themselves. Hopefully that's going to be you. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a friend. Maybe it'll be an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or a sibling or a neighbor or grandparent. But give them opportunities to express themselves and don't be too. One thing that parents are often doing is they're too quick to send the child to counseling. Say, well, we're going through separation. This child needs a counselor. Well, maybe they may need a counselor, but ask them, do you want to speak to someone? Don't force them into counseling. There's nothing worse for me as a therapist to have a child come in who doesn't want to talk to me. And I have to find some way to, chat with them for an hour and they're feeling really uncomfortable. I'm feeling really uncomfortable and we're not really helping or moving things forward at all. So um, uh, some kids will want to go to counseling. Great, have that information ready for them and be ready to book an appointment with them. Some kids won't want it, and some kids will feel resentful if you put them in counseling and they don't want to go because they're like, well, it's not my problem. You guys are having the divorce. I'm not the one who's going through the divorce. Why am I going to counseling? So make sure that you check in with them to see if they're open to that idea, if that's something that they would want to do, and ask them a lot of open-ended questions. How do you feel about this? How do you think this is going to impact you? What are you worried about? You know, uh, just give them a chance to kind of express themselves. So open-ended questions are different from closed questions. Closed questions are like a time or a date or a fact. So, or a yes or no. Did you have milk in your lunch today? That would be a closed question. Or an open question would be, tell me about your lunch. What did you do? So that gives an opportunity. The open questions open things up. They allow the child to tell their story and say what's on their mind. So try to use open-ended questions whenever you can. Sometimes a good closed question will give you a little bit more information on a detail that you want, but generally you want more open-ended questions and remember that you're not going to be able to take all their pain and suffering away from them. They're going to have to suffer a bit. They're going to have to go through a bit of pain. Everybody goes through separation, does that. Reassure them, comfort them. And, they can be upset about the separation, but they can still be okay. A lot of parents fear that, anytime their child gets upset, that means that they're permanently harmed from this, and that's not the case. Stress is the big problem here. We want to keep the children's level of stress down as low as possible. If stress gets above a certain threshold, and that certain threshold is different for different people, when it goes above that, that's when it gets into the harm. That's when it causes long-term problems, mental health problems, physical health problems, trauma, depression, anxiety, all those kinds of things. So try to keep their stress levels down below that threshold. And part of that is just giving them an opportunity to express themselves and tell their stories and let them know that, you're upset too. This is not something you're enjoying, and you didn't choose this, but it's something that's going to have to happen, and we're all going to get through this together. And I know you're upset. So validating feelings is really important. So that would be, acknowledging, I can see that you're feeling really upset and I'm sorry. But, unfortunately, this is something we have to go through. It could be active listening is another good skill for parents, where you're listening to their story and giving them feedback to let them know that you're listening. Wow, that sounds like you've really put a lot of thought into that, or tell me more about that, or wow, yeah, I didn't think about that before. When you react, you're telling them that you're listening and you're actively engaged in the conversation, then that will really help them feel heard and understood. But ultimately, you may not be the right person to speak to. Maybe they want someone else, maybe a friend or a family member who's neutral, who's not part of the separation, and maybe has a little bit of arm's length from it. Can be helpful as well. So just listen to them, hear their voice, and follow up on whatever they want to do to help get through this.
Thank you, Jonathan.
That would be my advice.
Thank you. So basically, it's natural for them to react. Let them express, sorry, and process their emotions, talk to them, let them open up to you, and this will help them deal with their feelings. If they're still struggling, you may want to explore outside help. And as the kids process these emotions, you want to make sure that you are there and you're providing them with the support and the stability that they need during this time. And as the kids process this, sorry, you want to make sure you give them stability. And Jodeen, that kind of takes us on to our next topic, which is stability. Would you like to speak on that and how providing this kind of reassurance is important for the children?
Right. So this topic was kind of interesting to me. It's kind of a tough one because, divorce and separation is change, and it's the literal opposite of stability. So, what can you do to ensure that children feel like they're supported and are actually supported, I think is what's most important in this situation, because there are going to be changes. They may have to get they may have to, the other party may leave the home. So one of the parents may leave the home, and that means that there's a whole other house that they're going to now to spend time with that other parent if there's there's shared parenting time involved. And so that's a huge change in and of itself. So the way that you can maintain stability is through is through your relationship with the children themselves, rather than uh, while ensuring that they maintain the same school is important. Like, they want their same friend group and things like that. If that is possible, that is ideal, because then that will allow them to just have the same structure that they had when the parties were together as a couple. And one less thing that they have to worry about changing. However, sometimes it's not feasible for that, or possible for that to happen. Depending on the situation that you have with your ex, you may have to move, and the children may have to move with you. And so I think it's in those situations, it's probably most important to focus on what the children like to do. And that can bring stability, that can bring reassurance. Like, I know that we've made these huge moves, but you're still going to play baseball, or we're still going to, do our trips in the summer, or maybe it will look a bit different. Maybe we'll scale it down a little bit, but we'll still spend time in this way or that way. Whatever it is, it's about reassuring your connections with the child, and whatever is within your power to not change. I think that's important when you're discussing parenting time and parenting plans and schedules with your ex, because then the folks the individuals who really feel the brunt of that change, when the parties are at loggerheads, will be the children. They're kind of in the firing line there, and you don't want to be tossing the children around like rag dolls, because, as Jonathan said, that we need to reduce stressors. And in the long run, that's never good for kids. So there, those are my quick thoughts on that. I mean, there are also, like, if you're moving residents or relocating, there are legal obligations that come with that as well. So under the Divorce Act, even if you move within the same city, that could be a change of that would be classified, or could be classified as a change of residence. Whereas if you're moving far away, that could classify as relocation. And so you need to be aware of whatever court orders, parenting arrangements are in place, so that you can ensure that all these because all these things factor into what is in the best interest of the child, and whether relocation might be permitted, because your ex might oppose the relocation. There's a lot of things that come into play with those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I do think that stability is kind of a fluid concept, in terms of it really depends on your situation and how best you can help the child feel supported and secure. Um, those are my
Can I add
inputs.
to something you just said there,
Yeah.
Jodeen? So uh, think of stability like juggling. Okay, juggling one object is pretty easy, right? You just pop it up and blah blah blah. Juggling two becomes a little bit more difficult. Juggling three, now you need some training and practice, and it becomes more complicated. The more things you have to juggle, the more complicated and difficult it becomes, right? By the time you're juggling 10 things, it's almost impossible. So think of that in terms of your child's perspective. If they have to handle one change, parents living separately, it's going to be stressful, but they'll get through it. Two, that's going to double the difficulty. Three, that's going to triple it, and so on and so forth. So that's why you want to keep things as much the same as possible. If you have to make changes, if you have to move to a new city because you can't afford to live in the same one that you were in before, these things happen. Obviously living in poverty is worse than moving homes or cities and changing schools. So it's always a calculation that you have to do in your head what's best. But generally, as a rule, you want to try to keep the changes to a minimum, because it means less juggling for that child's mind, and they're going to recover from the separation more quickly. and more changes just complicate their recovery. That's all.
Yeah, and changes are inevitable. You just want to make sure you're not overwhelming the children, right, Jonathan? Like that's what I would think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna move on to I know Jonathan has spoken about this, but I'll just say a bit more on, getting outside help, speaking to trusted adults and counselors when it comes to um having these conversations with children. I think as we've said, divorce is a challenging time. And so if we feel like the children do need outside help, then you wanna ensure that they're getting access to the support that they need to process the changes that come with the divorce. Um, and in general, as we've talked about it today, it can be an emotional and overwhelming experience for the children. And offering them this opportunity to speak to a trusted adult or a counselor can help them better navigate their feelings. And, if you have to, let your children know it's completely normal. They're going to feel upset, maybe confused, maybe angry. And they should know that, your children should know that it's very normal to feel these emotions and that there are people, if they are struggling with their emotions, that there are people available who can help them through these emotions. You can gently suggest that idea of speaking with a counselor who specializes in helping children cope with the divorce. Let them know that it is a safe and supportive space where they can talk freely about their emotions. There could be some pushback depending on the age of the children, but communicate to them that it's totally fine to seek help and to speak to someone if they are struggling with their emotions. And even in addition to seeking professional counseling, there's also, identifying adults or family members, that children are maybe close to, or maybe even teachers or close family friends whom your children can turn to if they need someone to talk to. Knowing that there are people that they can rely on beyond their parents can provide comfort and can provide reassurance, ensure that your children feel supported in knowing that they're not alone. And then there are like people in their lives who care about them. And so having these individuals that they can talk to can be really helpful. Um, and providing your children with this kind of support also demonstrates your commitment to their emotional well-being, which can be important in ensuring that their needs are met during any legal proceedings, or any decisions regarding to parenting. It shows that the parent are invested in the children's mental and emotional health, regardless of the changes in the family dynamic. And if you are within the litigation process, then this can help your case as well, because it shows that you are there to support the children, you understand their needs. Mm. And really, by offering them these options, you are helping your children feel empowered, and you're helping them manage these emotions, and which is going to help them even later on, in their life as they grow older, as they become adults, and as they live their life. So that's a little bit I wanted to say about, seeking help, seeking support from professionals or family members or people, or family friends, even teachers. Lastly, there's one more topic that I would like to speak on, and Jonathan, if you can kind of help us end today's series with speaking on how to maintain open communication with the children throughout this process. I know we talked about, this throughout the duration of today's topic, but if you can give us some pointers on how to maintain this open communication with the children, as you continue going through this process.
Yeah, so I'll address that question, just go back to what you said before about services. So I just want to point out a couple of options for people if they want to look for counseling for their kids. One is your work may have an employee assistance program that will get you really quick access to a therapist, usually within a week or two. So check with your workplace benefits. You may have other benefits through work that cover things like massage and physiotherapy and chiropractor that will also cover psychotherapy. In every single jurisdiction in Ontario, there is a children's mental health organization that will see your child for no cost. It's all publicly funded. In my area, in Durham region, it's Kinnerk and Frontenac Youth Services. And it's different depending on the region. So you might want to check for a children's mental health organization in your area. Those are some quick options for people to reach out to. In terms of like maintaining open communication with your child, remember that separation isn't an event. It's not a one thing. It's like I'm telling my kids and now we're separated and everything's gone. It's not like an event like a wedding or a graduation. It's a process that unfolds over time. So you may have had that first conversation with them, telling them, yes, we're separating. At some point, you're going to be living in separate homes. But that should be an ongoing conversation. Check in with your children every day. How are things going? I find with my kids, there's 2 times that are best to check in with them. One is bedtime. And my kids are older now, but back in the olden days when I used to read them stories in bed, that was a great time to say, hey, how are you doing? How was your day? Anything bothering you? And we would often have really great conversations about the separation and their feelings about it during those bedtime conversations. The other time that's great, and works especially well with teenagers, is when you're in the car, because they are a captive audience. They can't run away from you. It's often a great place to have a conversation with the kids. So check in with them. How are things going? How are you feeling about this? Do you have any worries? Ask those great open-ended questions. Active listen to them when they're talking, responding appropriately to let them know that you're listening and you care about their thoughts and feelings. If they are going to therapy, ask them, hey, is there anything that you want me to discuss with your therapist? Would you want me to come to your therapy appointment? Or are there any issues that you have with me and my parenting or anything like that? That's a great way to help them develop that habit of telling you things that are difficult to talk about. And separation and divorce is very difficult. So get in the habit of taking the initiative. They're not going to necessarily come to you with these thoughts and feelings, so you should be going to them and just checking in with them periodically. That's a really kind of great way to open those lines of communication. And when you're talking to them, make sure you're not telling the kids what's going on in court. You're not insulting or using sarcasm when you're talking about the other parent. You're not blaming the other parent for it. You're not telling the kids, information that they don't need to know, like that there was an affair or, whatever things that are not age appropriate for them. And I think that what you'll find is, as your child grows up and difficult things come up in their life, they're going to want to come to you and talk to you about those things. And that's going to be a really great support for them. In terms of counseling, getting back to that issue, one thing I did want to mention is for really little kids, counseling isn't really a great option, right? If you're 4 or 5 years old, you're not developed enough to have a good ability to participate in counseling. You don't understand how people's minds work. You don't understand how your own mind works. You're just not developmentally at a place where you can participate in therapy in a helpful way. So the options for kids that age are play therapy or art therapy. But again, those aren't really great options for kids. The best option actually is for little kids. If your kids are 6 years old or younger, for the parent to go to counseling and get parent counseling to help give them advice on how to manage their kids' emotional journey through the separation. Counseling for parents is much more effective than counseling for young kids. Once your kids are 7, 8, 9, counseling starts to become an option for them. And once they're, in their preteen or teenage years, counseling is a really great option for them. By then they have a theory of mind developed, so they're developmentally able to participate in the counseling better. I think recommending therapy, or you going to therapy yourself and telling your kids you're going to therapy, is another great way to open communication with them. Because you can talk about, hey, what did you talk to your counselor with? Are you open to chatting with me? And you can say, well, I talked to my counselor about this, and I think I'm going to start doing things differently and supporting you more because my counselor gave me some advice on how to do that. And that can be a really great way to open up those conversations with your kids. So last thing that I will say is that there are going to be things that the children are thinking that you may not be able to anticipate, or they may not, they may not be aware they're thinking it themselves. So one thing that we've already talked about is kids do have a tendency to blame themselves for separation, especially little kids. So you want to make sure that you reassure them frequently. This is not your fault. You didn't do anything to cause this. These are adult issues. They're not related to you or your behavior, or that time you had a temper tantrum because you didn't want to finish your broccoli, whatever it was. I think if you develop a good routine of talking about those things, then your kids will be fine. They'll go through a difficult time. It will be stressful for them, but it will be manageable stress, and they'll get through to the other side. And they are going to be better prepared to manage very difficult issues when they are adults as well. If you can show them the way, you can show them how we handle very difficult situations, it's going to be wonderful for them when they are going through. I mean, I don't know about you folks, but when I was growing up, I never learned how to deal with separation and divorce. I never learned, they don't teach you in school how to help have a healthy relationship, how to engage in healthy communication in a marriage or as a parent. And a lot of the stuff we just have to kind of learn on our own, in the moment. So it doesn't always come naturally, and that's why it's really a great idea to reach out for help and support.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's an ongoing process, right? Like helping the children. It doesn't end anywhere, even after the divorce has been finalized. You still want to keep talking with them. You want to keep those communication channels open for them. And they should know that they always have this safe space to be able to communicate with you how they're feeling. And like you said, a lot of times they might not initiate these conversations. But as the parent, you want to be mindful of, checking in with them, making sure you're kind of there to support them. Even if it may feel like they are not communicating to you, maybe they still want to hear that from you. And so if you are mindful that you are taking these steps, then you can make sure you're there and supporting them as they go through this process. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan and Jodeen, for such a great session. And thank you to our audience for tuning into our Family Law Now session for today. This is the end. Following this session, a brief survey will appear, which will allow you to share your comments and your suggestions for future topics that you would like us to explore. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. You will be receiving some show notes after this session. You can also book a complimentary consultation, as I promised before, with one of our lawyers. You can contact our intake team to do that at intake@russellalexander.com. And you can provide them with the code JP2025 to schedule your appointment. Registration is now open for our next event. You want to just go to our website, russellalexander.com/familylawnow. Well, thank you everyone again, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. Have a good night.